In this lecture, I will be talking about a balanced literacy program and the components that you would most likely find in one. I'll be talking about the different modes of reading and writing and how those are balanced in a balanced literacy program, how the amount of teacher support is balanced, how there's a focus on words and meaning, how the types of texts are balanced, how the grouping procedures are balanced, and how the variety of assessments are balanced. When we think about the modes of reading and writing in a balanced literacy program, there's a balance between both of those modes. We have the read aloud, which is done mostly by the teacher, with the students just listening, hopefully listening attentively. We have shared reading, where the teacher is still primarily responsible for the reading with some input by the students. In guided reading, this would be like ability grouped small collections of children who are reading the same level of book, but the children here are responsible for the initial reading of the book with support by the teacher. And then we have independent reading where the students are 100% responsible for the reading. Similarly, in writing, we have modeled writing where the teacher would be modeling her writing on a whiteboard or on an overhead projector, and the students would be observing that while the teacher was thinking aloud. Interactive writing, where the teacher still controls the pen, but the children are contributing to that piece of writing. Guided writing, where this would most likely be occurring in like an individual writing conference with a teacher and a child, but the child is doing the writing there with support by the teacher. And finally, we have independent writing, where the child is 100% responsible for the writing. We also have spelling and word study that occur in both reading and in writing. In terms of teacher support, we vary the teacher support through these different modes of reading. So if you look at this diagram, as you move from left to right, in reading aloud, we have the most amount of support or responsibility of the teacher and the least amount of independence by the children. And as we move to the right of the diagram to independent reading, you see that the support of the teacher decreases and the independence of the reader increases. And so across the course of a day or a week, we want to be sure that children are having opportunities to do all of these different modes of reading. The same is true for writing. As you move from the left modeled writing to the right independent writing, you can see that the amount of support by the teacher decreases while the amount of responsibility or independence on the part of the child increases. We also want to have a balance of the focus on words and meaning. Word study is very important. We want to do some of that word study in isolation, and we want to do some of that word study within the context of real literature. But we want to balance that out with a focus on comprehension. And what typically happens is that there's a very large focus on word study in the early grades, and then children have difficulty transitioning to a focus on comprehension as they move up in the grades. So we want to make sure that we're always having a balance between word study and comprehension focus. We want to have a balance in terms of the types of texts. We want to use a variety of genre. Teachers tend to want to stick to the genre that they prefer. For example, I don't really like poetry that well, so I would have to make a concerted effort to include poetry into my collections of books, especially for things like my read aloud and for guided reading. So we want a variety of genre: nonfiction and fiction, historical fiction, realistic fiction. We may find that some children really blossom when they're reading nonfiction. We want books representing a variety of cultural groups. My daughters are both Asian, and I just shudder to think that they might go through one school year without seeing their face reflected in any of the teachers' read-alouds, for example. So we want to be sure and include a variety of cultural groups. This is important whether your classroom is very heterogeneous or whether it is not. We need books representing a variety of family structures. Children need to know that all family structures are important, especially theirs. So we want adoptive families, we want single parent families, we want that are headed by grandparents, we want traditional um, families in which there's a mother and a father too. We want a balance of easy and challenging books so that children have opportunities to read things that are very easy for them and experience high levels of success. But we also want opportunities for them to read challenging materials that are at the very cutting edge of what they are capable of reading. We want a balance between familiar and new texts so children have opportunities to read things that they love and know. This is where browsing boxes are really a great idea, where each child has a small collection of books at his desk where he can collect some familiar books. And then there should be some new books in the browsing box too, so that there are always opportunities to read something that the child is not familiar with. And we want to make sure that children are having opportunities to read electronic texts because we know that for adults now about 80 to 90% of all reading they do is digital. So we want to include that in our balance of text as well. We want to balance out the types of grouping. We want our grouping schemes to be flexible, that children don't get stuck in one group and never move out of it. We want to have some whole group opportunities and some small group opportunities. We want to have some ability-based grouping. That's particularly effective during guided reading, for example. We want to have a lot of needs-based groups. So that is, we are assessing what children need, we're placing them in groups based on similar needs, and giving them the instruction they need when they need it. We need some interest-based groups so that the groups are formed based on children's interest in a topic or interest in reading the same book. And we want to think about making our groups heterogeneous at times so that we make a focus on trying to vary the ability and the characteristics of the children in the groups. In a balanced literacy program, the assessment procedures also need to be balanced between formal and informal measures. We need to know how children rank or rate against similar children at the same age. Those are the types of formal assessments. And then we need a lot of informal assessments. And these are the types of assessments that we would do daily that would affect our teaching. We need some formative assessments where we look at how are children doing so far so that we can alter the assessment to meet their needs. And then we need some summative assessment at the end to see have they met the standards that we were addressing. Children need some opportunities to do some self-evaluation, to look at their progress, to see where they are, and to make some goals for themselves, and then see if they reach them. And then we might want to have some opportunities for children to evaluate each other, to see how they perform in relation to their peers, and learn to be each other's cheerleaders, for example. So when we think about a definition of balanced literacy, it's an approach that provides students with daily opportunities to engage in a variety of reading and writing activities and participate in instruction that varies or is balanced in terms of teacher support, directness, and focus. Literacy activities involve a variety of texts, and student achievement is measured in several different ways. Balanced literacy instruction respects and addresses the needs of all learners, views teachers as informed decision makers, is flexible, and is research-based. So it's a very tall order, but as you're creating your classroom literacy program, you want to keep all of these factors in mind.